the winter meetings used to be something, I think, different. You've been to a few of these. This ended up just being a one-trick pony in the end with all the discussion of Ohtani, or was it? Was there lots of other discussion going on, and how much were the Jays involved in other things like Alek Manoah?
You know, it really was a one trick story, or a one trick pony story this time around. Uh, and you know it well, John. It's the free agency in baseball is so dramatically different than it is in hockey. When, you know, if it's not wrapped up by July 2nd, it's wrapped up by July 3rd after things open up on July 1st. Here, it's, you know, it always drags into December, or into January rather, and some of the big names don't even go until mid to late December. I think George Springer was right around this time the year that he was signed. I think that Dalton Varsho last year was December 23rd. So it does drag on. But this year was certainly extraordinary, because the narrative was all driven by Shohei Ohtani, and then the pursuit of however many teams were involved. And, you know, I suppose it happens for a good reason, because the rest of the market can't really align itself and get moving until that deal is done, that money is spent, and it sort of sets the market for other prominent free agents, but it delays the process. And now, having said that, general managers around the league are there and they're talking, and, you know, you would hope, and Ross Atkins, when I asked him about it, as any good general manager would, said that they've been working on all kinds of things, whether it's free agents or trades. And they have a fairly thorough front office there. You know, they've got 5 or 6 guys in their baseball operations department that essentially function as almost as assistant GM. So there's all that sort of business gets taken care of, but it gets, in terms of anything productive happening, it gets drawn out by the one big story. But I've, you know, in the 7 or 8 of these that I've done, I've never seen anything as slow moving as last week, for sure, and have one player and one story dominate it.
And what about Manoah?
Oh, Manoah. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, both John Schneider and Ross Atkins said all the right things about Manoah, that they've talked to him in the off season, and that he's working hard, and that they're convinced he's going to come back and be better. But we all know there's a disconnect between the player and the front office, and we all know that, you know, he could be viewed as an asset if there's teams out there that believe that he is much more the pitcher that he was in 2022 than 2023. So sure, why wouldn't you explore options for trading him, especially when you feel that you've got options in that rotation, and especially when you feel that Ricky Tiedemann is close. You certainly explore what you might be able to get for Alek Manoah.
I think he's untradeable at this point.
Why?
Value.
Would you trade for him?
No, I wouldn't. But there's, you know, we've seen enough in professional sports that everybody thinks that every player can be rehabilitated in some form or manner. You know that.
I think what the other teams saw, and probably know more than we do. All of them probably know more than we do, and we know the Jays know more than we do. Have scratched Manoah off their list, and need to see what he can do before they're interested again. That would be that's my opinion. But as far as the meetings go, if the Dodgers had announced Ohtani's signing in Nashville, then the big event would have been the press conference that is happening today in Los Angeles. And there will be, now, not that Ohtani's going to have a whole lot to say, because he never does, but there'll be lots of questions about the contract, the way it's structured. There'll be a lot of interest in what the Dodgers have to say. I think the most interesting part of the contract, and there are many parts, how would you like to be Andrew Friedman, the president of baseball operations, who, if he leaves the Dodgers in the next 10 years, Shohei Ohtani is allowed to walk out the door behind him. Andrew Friedman has a guaranteed 10-year contract as president of baseball operations for the LA Dodgers. The owner, Mark Walter, is in the same position. If he sold the team, Ohtani can can leave. So both those guys are secure. You know, how do you come up with stuff like this? This is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty creative bookkeeping, right? I mean, it's, you know, people are outraged by it and whatnot, but it's right there in the CBA. It's, you know, they obviously they've exploited the small print, but it is pretty creative. I was amused somewhat that when it was suggested that it was Ohtani's idea to have this deferral. I mean, while he may have been on board with it, I'm reasonably certain it came from the Dodgers front office and Ohtani's agency that came up with the creative side of it, not necessarily Shohei Ohtani. I'm sure he agreed with it and could see some of the value in it, but it was the ingenious part of it came elsewhere.
You think
Well,
Yamamoto will be watching the press conference from the wings? I mean, Ohtani's had his arm around his shoulder and is trying his best to get the Dodgers to outbid the Mets and the Yankees. And Yamamoto has to be interested in what the Dodgers can provide if they sign him too. And boy, they need him. They need him more than they need Ohtani in terms of what he can do for their roster next year. But what I mean, imagine if they get him too. I mean, do you think he's going there, Rob?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what he wants, but you know, presumably he would have grown up in his baseball career somewhat idolizing Shohei Ohtani, and presumably he would have seen the struggles that Ohtani had playing on a team that never made the playoffs, and he obviously would have followed the whole show of the courtship of Ohtani with LA and the other teams. And why wouldn't you want to go? I mean, unless you didn't want to be in the shadow of him, or unless you felt there would be too much pressure in that spotlight moving to North America. Why wouldn't you want to go? Why wouldn't you want to go to a team where you would be in the starting rotation right away, and you'd be a World Series contender right away, and you would get to work alongside one of the greats of your homeland? I'm just wondering if the Japanese media contingent that follows Ohtani, that some have suggested is 50 strong, would have to double to 100 strong if they got Yamamoto as well.
Is this good for baseball? This concentration and this amount of money, is it good for the sport? Obviously, at some point, baseball is financially more viable than everybody thinks that it's. The old stories of baseball being of a dying sport aren't true, but is what's going on with this and the discussion and the money, is it really good for baseball as a whole, do you think, Rob?
Well, the Players Association would suggest it is, I suppose. But I wonder, if the gap between the big, massive money teams and the struggling to survive teams, or the teams that are unwilling to spend money on stars, I wonder if that gap gets too big all of a sudden. And it's always baseball, because there's no salary cap, has always kind of been a league with the haves and the have-nots. But if that gap gets to be too extreme, you wonder if it really is good for baseball. I mean, I remember, like, earlier in my career, I was offered, I was asked if I'd be interested in moving to the baseball beat, and at that point I really wasn't, and the Jays weren't doing very well. And I remember one of the things that kind of shied me away from it was, how do you cover a team that is 27 and a half games out of first place on July 1st, and you still got 80 more games to play? It's a roundabout way of saying, like, how do these fan bases in markets that aren't paying money, and have teams that are struggling, like Oakland and Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh got a beautiful ballpark and nobody goes to it, right? Nobody went to Baltimore for years because, a good baseball town. Nobody went there for years either because the team was awful. So if that gap gets to be too much, and it comes because of these extreme free agent contracts, then yeah, maybe it's not good for baseball.